r/AskReddit, what was the hardest piece of news you've had to tell someone? Telling someone's family that we are giving up on searching for their loved ones who are lost at sea. I come from a fishing community, so I know what that looks like on the family side. Thank you for what you do. We know it's just as hard on y'all. After my wife woke up from a medically induced coma, I had to tell her our son died. The look of soul-shattering pain still bothers me. Bar regular of mine almost fell to his death washing windows in a 4-story building. He miraculously survived yet broke every bone in his body and cracked his skull. First responders were firefighters right near Houston Street and Broadway in New York City. If they hadn't responded, he would have died right there. Fast forward 4 weeks later, September 15th, 2001. He is out of his coma and finally able to be taken home by his sister and out of hospice. Barely able to speak, he manages to whispers that he wants her pass him by the fire station 2 blocks down so he could thank his rescuers. His sister had to then explain the black smoke still lingering in the air, the entirety of the 9/11 attacks, and that every single first responder that helped him perished. Sometimes that worn out older man sitting at the bar day drinking red wine has a really good story to tell. Broke my heart. When I was 22, my parents asked me to come home and watch my grandma, who had dementia and needed a caregiver, while they went to visit my brother who was living out of the country. 2 days in, my grandma died in her sleep. Not only did I have to deal with being the person who found my grandma dead by myself, but I then had to call all of my various family members, parents, aunts, brothers, to let them know what happened. Telling my sister that our dad's heart attack was indeed fatal. I had to tell my mom that the bike that I reported stolen to the police was under the fucking porch. Okay, this was a nice breather after all the horrific death stories I've been reading. TBH, that would be terrifying had it been my mother Mayo. When I was probably 12 to 13, I was driving with my dad in town and we decided to stop in on my 70Y/O grandmother who lived alone at about 3 in the afternoon on a Sunday, just to check up on her. We ring the doorbell several times. Nothing. We knock on the door. We knock harder. Nothing. So dad uses his spare key to let us in. We get inside and it is all dark and quiet. We give this look to each other that says, well, fuck, we are about to find grandma dead somewhere in here. We go room by room and finally we get to her bedroom. You can hear her noise machine and humidifier running behind the door. We slowly open up her bedroom door. She jumps up out of bed and yells, "Oh my god, you scared me. I was just really tired today, so I thought I'd go to bed a little bit early." Tell my dad, who was in the hospital 2 weeks away from his own death, that his father had died. Dad hadn't yet accepted that he himself was dying, though my sister and I could see it. Grandpa had been in hospice for 2 months, so we all knew that his end was near. In the week between Grandpa's death and his funeral, Dad began to accept that he didn't have much time left. Dad made it to Grandpa's funeral, albeit via ambulance/wheelchair, and saw his extended family for the last time. That was a surreal experience for me, watching him say goodbye. Edit. Typo. I had to tell my spouse and children that my 26-year-old took his own life. I'm so truly sorry. I have a 22-year-old son with depression, who I worry about every day. Sometimes we won't leave him for fear of him being alone. I'm sending you love and peace. I had to tell my best friend in high school that I was the one who reported her dad for molesting her. She had spoken only to me in confidence and our pastor. They pulled her out of class after it was reported and allowed her a friend for comfort. She chose me, and as she sat sobbing, speaking of how horribly she hated our pastor, how she would never forgive him, I looked her in the eyes and told her it was me. I was 16. Tell my dad, who had dementia, my mother passed away from cancer. This is so painfully familiar. My dad kept forgetting, and if I'm 100% honest, I stopped telling him after a while. When he asked where she was or when she was coming home, I would just say that she would be coming home later and tell him not to worry. I tried to be honest initially, but this was much kinder, I think. My daughter died from suicide at 20 years old. My mom was in her last hours in hospice. I had to tell her It was the worst weekend in my life. 10 years later, I still struggle with it. I miss them both every day. Edit. She told me she would look for her. Edit. I don't know much at all about this formatting thing. To answer as to why I told her, this was after my mom had a long battle with cancer. We made a pact early on, along with my sister, of a strict policy of honesty from then on. I was bound to tell her. I actually think the news helped her along to the other side. I have been beside loved ones at their deaths near in the past. It is not easy for them to let go. She died within the hour. This week marks 10 years. I'm now finally not relying on the bottle to cope. My wife, not my daughter's mother, but very close to my daughter just the same, has been a lifesaver and huge support despite my PTSD rage. Some days are great, others, I just want to give up. Your comments and gilding have uplifted me today. For that, I cannot thank you enough, dear editors. That cardinal living in my backyard for the last 8 years makes me smile every day. My dad found me right after I drank bleach, was 14, attempted suicide. Had to explain why my room smelled like bleach to a man slowly losing it as he pieced together what was happening while in excruciating pain. Had to call my girlfriend parents at 1 AM to tell them there was a bad accident, that their daughter was en route to her, and I thought she would be okay. She died on arrival. Worst day of my life. I had to tell my mom that dad died. Her husband of 45 years. Dad wasn't feeling good. He had a bit of a cough on a Sunday morning, so he didn't go to church with my mom. Mom called me on the way to church to see if I'd go check on dad. No problem, right? Old man and I will watch some war movies or something. I get to the house and dad has more than a bit of a cough. It's like full-blown pneumonia. He asks for some blankets, which I grab. He doesn't want to watch a show or anything, so I play with my dachshund a bit and let him run around their massive yard. When I come back and dad asks for a breathing treatment, he has COPD, so he had albuterol treatments. I grab the treatment, but when I hand it to him, I realize he has blue lips. I picked him up, tell him we are going to the we make it to the front door, and he grabs the door handle and won't let go. He slumps down and stares at me. I tell him I love him. He blurts out I love, I love, I love, and then he is dead. I call 911 while doing CPR. But I know. 10 years as a paramedic, and I had failed my dad. I failed to see the signs before my very eyes. I called mom to get home as soon as possible. She was picking us up a pizza. I begged the paramedics to transport my dad, even though they had every right to call it on scene. I didn't want mom to see dad like this. Mom gets home, and I have to tell her. I've told families that I'll do everything I can to save their dead baby. I've had to answer questions from parents that were burnt severely, that we were still looking for their child in their fully engulfed house. I've even had to deal with family members showing up on a scene and seeing their teenage daughter headless in the driver's seat of an accident. This was the worst. I wake up screaming in my sleep often now. It was bad before, and it's been 2 years now since I failed my dad, but now it's an almost every night event now. So yeah. A friend of mine at university committed suicide. I ended up sitting down with, or calling some of our friends, so the first they heard of it wasn't over Facebook, or in the news. 18 months on and it still eats away a bit inside. Hey white mom, you know that black girl you didn't want me to marry because she was black? Yeah, I married her. She disowned me and moved 18 hours away, all while trying to convince me that I was in the wrong and that she did not disown me. Classic r/just nominal congratulations. I wish you a long and happy marriage. 3 years strong, and our personalities are perfect for each other, resulting in daily joy and laughter. Telling my adult son that he needed to find another place to live because he was unwilling to look for work, quit smoking pot, stay in school, or abide by the rules of the house. 2 years later, he's back, has a jet, has a good job, is clean and has just bought a car. I couldn't be more proud of the outcome. He told me that he finally realized that he fucked up when the last 2 people who would ever give up on him did. Tell friends that I finished my 10 years relationship. I've been doing that for my 6-year relationship. Haven't had to tell my nieces yet. Next week is going to suck. Hey, mom. Hey, Dad. So, it is cancer. After a friend of my brother's died, my mom told me a parent should never have to bury their child. I think it's her worst fear. It took me a while to gather myself before I could make that phone call home. If you enjoyed this video, then hit the like button and subscribe if you'd like to see more future videos.